Up to this point in this video series, we've been addressing questions that deal with what it means to be a human thinker. All of these questions and topics fall into a very broad question. What are we? In one sense, the answer is obvious. We're human. But this raises another question. What does it mean to be human? Let's discuss. Up to this point, the question, what are we, has yielded some pretty interesting results. We're creatures with beliefs, core beliefs that form our identity. We're creatures who have, at least to some degree, predictable patterns of behavior. For example, most of us try our best to avoid cognitive dissonance. We're creatures who make claims to certainty, especially about our core beliefs. But we're also creatures who can claim certainty and simultaneously be wrong about that certainty. We're creatures who can explore beliefs logically, rationally. This was part of the reason we went through the inductive and deductive forms of argumentation and looked at how to evaluate them. We're going to continue exploring the question, what are we? In this episode, the main question is, are we animals? The answer to this question might seem obvious to you, but it might be obvious in different ways for different people. Some people emphasize the difference between humans and animals, and in some cases they even hesitate using the word animal to refer to humans. These people might think it's obvious that humans aren't animals, or if we push them, they might say something more along the lines of humans aren't merely animals. Other people acknowledge and embrace the stark similarities between humans and other animals. These people might think it's obvious that humans are in fact just another kind of animal. For the remainder of this episode, we're going to consider the background of these different ways of answering the question, are humans animals? The great Greek philosopher Aristotle accepted that humans were animals. Like other animals, humans have instincts and biological needs like eating and drinking. But Aristotle also believed that humans were absolutely unique animals because they possessed rationality, which, in a very basic sense, is just the ability to act according to reason as opposed to instinct. A number of Christian theologians and philosophers, including Thomas Aquinas, were heavily influenced by the views of Aristotle, and the views of other philosophers who made similar claims. In much of Christian theology, humans are viewed as unique creatures embodying two separate worlds. The physical, material world on the one hand, and the mental, spiritual world on the other hand. Humans were, in a sense, the overlap in a Venn diagram between merely physical animals and completely spiritual entities like angels and God. The first chapter of Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible, describes human beings as being made in the image and likeness of God. This phrase, the image of God, became central to Christian understandings of what it meant to be human. For much of Christian history, this phrase was interpreted to refer to the capabilities and characteristics that people believed to be uniquely human. Most common among these characteristics were rationality and free will. This dualistic way of looking at the world continued with Christian philosophers such as René Descartes and Immanuel Kant. For Descartes, the uniqueness of human rationality was evident in the fact, or at least what he considered to be the fact, that only humans had language. Descartes thought of non-human animals as machine-like creatures who operated solely based on instinct. Not only did Descartes deny that animals had rationality, he also denied that they had the ability to suffer. Kant also understood humans as uniquely rational and autonomous, which means that humans are able to act on more than just instinct or preferences. Based on this claim, Kant divided the world into two categories: persons and things. The term person was reserved for rational humans. For Kant, it was essential that we respect persons for their own sake. That is, we owe them moral consideration just because they're persons. Everything in the physical world that wasn't rational, which included all non-human animals, fell into the category of thing. And for Kant, it was proper to make instrumental use of things for the sake of persons. Because animals weren't persons, humans had no direct moral responsibility to them. One can make the historical case that, over time, humans began to emphasize the dissimilarities between humans and other animals over and against the similarities. In other words, the uniqueness of human beings became more important than the manner in which we were similar to other creatures around us. In fact, in some cases, humans seemed downright threatened by the idea that humans were similar to other creatures. Perhaps one of the clearest examples of this is the way that some Christians responded to Darwinism. Now, to be clear, a number of Christians actually embraced Darwin's views, even at the time he was developing them. But other Christians were troubled by Darwin's theory of evolution, as well as other forms of the theory that followed after Darwin. There were at least three reasons for this. First, Darwin's theory of natural selection didn't require God to explain the apparent design in nature. For many Christians, this meant that the theory was essentially atheistic. Second, Darwin's theory about the emergence of life contradicted what many Christians believed the Bible said about the age of the earth and the creation of human beings. Third, for many Christians, Darwin's theory of evolution seemed to suggest that human beings were just another kind of mammal. This idea broke down the long-standing barrier between humans and other animals, suggesting that human beings were on the same spectrum as those animals. This also raised questions about whether or not human beings could still be considered to be made in the image of God. As I said, not all Christians expressed these fears, but some did, and some continue to do so. A 2018 poll from the Pew Research Center found that a number of Christians continue to reject the idea that humans evolved. This includes 38% of all white evangelical Christians, 27% of black Protestants, 16% of white mainline Protestants, and 13% of Roman Catholics. These Christians maintain that humans did not evolve from other animals, but were created especially by God, unique. However, I think it's worth noting that most Christians in all of these categories do accept that humans did evolve, though most of them believe that God guided evolution toward the creation of human beings. You'll recall from our previous episode on argumentation that inductive reasoning follows the best evidence available to come up with a conclusion that is more probable than other conclusions. The more probable the conclusion, the stronger the argument. I think that the scientific evidence supports the conclusion that humans evolved. For example, fossil records show a number of human-like species, missing links if you will, that died off in part because they were in competition with other human-like species. The human genetic code shares a great deal in common with other animals, especially primates. Chimpanzees, for example, share about 98.8% of their genetic code with humans. Some great apes, such as gorillas, share about 98.4%. The study of embryos, which is called embryology, shows very interesting similarities between humans and other animals. For example, like fish embryos, human embryos, and a lot of other mammal embryos, have gill slits in their early embryonic stages. We can combine this evidence with other evidence from chemistry and cosmology to present a rather striking picture of the narrative that led to human beings being on the planet. And it's a narrative that human beings share with all other creatures. Let's paint a brief picture of it. Cosmological and geological evidence suggests that the universe is around 13.8 billion years old, and the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. The dominant theory among scientists is that it all began with a Big Bang. Carl, you can add some magic there, right? Okay, it's gonna be good, right? Don't put some crappy stuff up there. I want the real good stuff. What am I paying you for? Okay, never mind that I don't pay you. Give me some good special effects anyway. Almost immediately after the Big Bang, the universe dramatically inflated. At this point, the universe was milky and cloudy. Gotta do something about this cloudiness, Carl. 20 minutes into the life of the universe, hydrogen and helium are the only elements that exist. And at this point, the universe became transparent. But this transparent universe was a very dark universe. Hello? 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 We turn out the lights. The first stars don't appear until about 400 million years after the Big Bang. But when they do, they illuminate the universe. This early generation of stars provided the foundation for later cosmic developments. For example, in these stars, heavier elements such as carbon and iron were able to form. When the stars went supernova, they scattered these elements across the universe. When a later generation of stars formed, these heavy elements would swirl around them in disks, and the elements would form together into rock-like planets. This is actually how planet Earth came to be born. Aww, look at it, Carl. So young, so full of potential. By the way, it's interesting to note that because all iron and carbon actually came from these stars, the carbon that is in your body and the iron that's in your blood, yeah, all of that came from stars. That's where we get that poetic expression, we are made from stardust. Let's talk about planet Earth for a moment. Through a tumultuous and rather violent narrative, an atmosphere is formed and Earth becomes conducive to life. We're not super sure exactly how life started, but once it did, early life forms were able to oxygenate the atmosphere, making room for later life forms. Through the mechanisms of evolutionary development, the complexity of life radically increased during the Cambrian period. And as life stumbled through subsequent periods, massive extinction events helped direct evolution in its pathway. For example, the extinction of the dinosaurs paved the way for mammals to have a day in the sun, which paved the way for humans to evolve. I love my life, Carl, but God help me, I miss those dinosaurs. I really, really do. Mammals evolve in various directions. About 55 million years ago, primates arrive on the biological scene. Hominids arrive about 6 million years ago, eventually evolving into modern-day humans about 200,000 years ago. This narrative suggests that humans are intricately intertwined with the rest of the world. In other words, the evidence suggests that humans are part of the common story of existence. A common story of creation, if you will. Like all other animals, humans are multicellular, eukaryotic, heterotrophic organisms whose cells lack cell walls. I mean, the Hallmark card writes itself, really. Humans are vertebrate mammals of the order Primate, family Hominidae, and genus Homo. Like every other creature on Earth, humans are mortal, carbon-based life forms. So yes, the evidence suggests that humans are animals. We share a common narrative with all other life forms that stretches all the way back to the stars and the Big Bang. There's nothing about this story that precludes belief in God. But the story does raise two questions. First, if humans are animals, what does that mean about our relationship with other non-human animals? We're going to explore this question in the next episode. Second, humans are animals, but what makes us uniquely human? We're going to explore that 2 episodes from now. Until then, farewell. Multicellular. I swear to God, I can't say that word.